Steelers fans, welcome into the Noll Road, where today we talk about what it's going to take to beat the Houston Texans and the key matchups to look at here as Steelers-Texans Monday night approaches. Rodgers and Stroud, just the tipping point of this epic playoff matchup, Pittsburgh and Houston. Here we go.
Ben to the corner of the end zone. Oh, for a touchdown!
Yeah, welcome in, Dawson and New Bear. Hit that like button if you want to see the Steelers get the dub. If you haven't subscribed yet, we go long form 4 times a week, and we're going to carry this torch hopefully all the way through the Super Bowl, and then free agency, the draft, OTAs, and on into Latrobe. 24/7, 365. Welcome into the Noll Road. I'm Gavin Dawson along with New Bear, and this is mid Saturday afternoon, so we're already off on the right foot and watching playoff football. Buffalo just beat Jacksonville. Incredible, thrilling finish, but that first domino has dropped, hasn't it, New Bear?
Yeah, I love this. I mean, you say things like, hey, there's a path for them to host all the way to the Super Bowl. And you're like, it's never going to happen. All this other stuff would have to happen. Well, it's happening. And, the big one, this first big one is really interesting because with Brady obviously being off into ownership and no Mahomes and Burrow, it's like Josh Allen has no excuses. Forget the seeding. He's the best quarterback. He's got to win. And, man, did he put on a show there at the end today.
It was incredible. But I think Buffalo is flawed. I'm not scared of it, despite how that regular season matchup went. Okay.
I hope we get to talk about that and argue with some Bills Mafia, including my brother-in-law.
Yes, that would be incredible. Okay, let's start with Steelers against the last 9 years as our first key matchup. Outscored 73 zip in the first quarter, 38 points a game, 15 touchdowns to 1 interception from your opposing quarterbacks over the last 6 playoff games. They trailed in each contest by at least 21 points. It was 28 against the Browns, which is, something that you would love to have removed permanently from your memory. But my question here for you in the audience, leave a comment down below. Thanks for checking us out. Does this stuff matter right now?
Well, you want to say no, because you want to say we're in a vacuum. This is this team. What does Mike Tomlin always talk about? The collective isn't concerned about, the past 9 years. This team, a lot of these guys are new. They don't even know. They weren't here. They don't have the scar tissue from those wounds. And yes, true. But this team was also standing on the field in Acrisure listening to the fans call for their coach just a few weeks ago. So this team has some scar tissue. This team has felt pressure probably in a different way than any of those teams over the course of, since 2016 AFC Championship game, because none of those teams had the Aaron Rodgers plus the $200 million defense. Like, all the elements of this collective, add up in a different way to the point where the expectations have changed. The end of Ben after the elbow injury, post Ben, Kenny Pickett, Duck Hodges, Mason Rudolph, Russ, and Justin Fields. Like, the expectation was like you needed a bunch of things to go right. You needed to get every break. You needed to play a particular way and then get help. Whereas now Aaron Rodgers is mitigating those things and you're winning not in spite of him, but because of him. So different kind of conversation.
Yeah, I'm with you. I wish it didn't matter. I wish for sure you could say, oh, that's hogwash. But until they win, until they score in the first quarter, I think you could say these teams are similar in construction. I think you could say it's a Tomlin coach team. And by that, I mean he's really good at building regular season teams. And they didn't break the streak of not scoring more than a touchdown. What are we at now? 65, 66 consecutive games? That is kind of the bones of the team. So I'll say that, but I also want to bookend that on the other side with saying it doesn't mean you're doomed to fail. It just means there's some concerning trends.
So the one that always makes me laugh the most is giving up 45 points to Blake Bortles. But it's not just that, or that, the first time I brought this up, you were looking up the stats and you were like, oh my God, TJ Yeldon was their leading receiver with the running back with 3 catches for 57 yards that day. It's the fact that Ben threw for 469 and 5 and you put up 42 and lost. It's the fact that that is like the macro problem, right, of the microcosm, which is as much as you want to talk about the quarterback room and everything I just said about Ben in the post-Ben world, the defense isn't getting it done either. I mean, TJ Watt goes and gets a strip sack fumble return or, any other good thing that goes your way at the beginning of the game. You look up at the scoreboard at the end of the day and it's 30-plus points, or in the case of the Ravens game, it should have been, but instead they just said, we want to punish you and go for 299, right? So, like, does it matter, to your point, what everything you said is true, and until you change it, it is the truth. What this team is trying to prove is that they are different and that they can go out and it's not their curse to break. It's just winning this game.
Yeah, and maybe the most important difference is that it's Aaron Rodgers. Since Ben, you've had guys that you would predict these guys aren't going to win playoff games, are they? No, they're not. And it's probably going to be embarrassing, isn't it? Yes, it will be.
I've said this a bunch. TJ in particular, you could see it. It was like the LeBron James, the shaking hand, the shaking fist meme. Like the I'm so mad that I have to go do something, but I know I'm not supposed to, but I'm going to do it anyway. You would see TJ cheat and take a chance because he knew he needed to go get a peanut punch, and maybe he gives up the edge, or it hurts them in some other way based on their gap integrity. And I mean, if TJ Watt's doing it, then Patrick Queen's doing it. Then a rookie, is doing it. And up and down the defense, you're like, okay, well, it's hard not to see this thing unraveling. And Aaron Rodgers simply existing, not even being great, but just being in the huddle, means that everyone else believes or can at least grasp the idea that if I do my job, everything should work out in the end.
All righty, up next here on the Noll Road, Dawson and New Bear talking matchups. What's the matchup you think is going to define this game? Leave a comment down below. I'm going to go with, and this one's a little bit tricky as well. We'll get into player on player here in just a second, but the weather and the field against Houston, and there's a lot of angles on this. Sure. I think 32 degrees is perfect because that is cold enough to make Houston very uncomfortable. Like, to a Texan, 32 might as well be 15. And for Steelers, especially what the weather has been like over the last month, 32 can feel quite nice. So I think the Steelers are going to be quite comfortable. It's not like 6, where it's like both teams are going to be miserable. I think the Steelers at 32 degrees have a significant advantage just off the top. DeMeco Ryans, as head coach, finally got his first win in sub-freezing temps just a few weeks ago against Kansas City. They scored 20 points. You're in the midst of Kansas City's collapse at the end of this dynasty. He is 1-3. Houston all time is 4-7 in sub-freezing temperatures. So, you got a lot going for you in this direction. And then the big overarching stat that we've given a couple of times this week, just because it's worth repeating a third time, dome teams 1-14 when playing under 40 degrees. Like, this is a significant factor. And I think if you're Houston, you're quietly nervous about this.
Yeah, the 32 degrees is really interesting because it has to be warm enough to snow. Like, I don't know if you know that. I don't know how much you guys get down there, the chicken soup game and stuff. Joe Montana back in the day. But like, that's one of my favorite things about Mother Nature, because it's like almost contradictory. What do you mean it has to be warm enough to snow? When it gets really cold and it's like frozen, and you're talking about it being ice and slick and how bad this field is. I mean, Hines, Acrisure, it's one of the worst fields in the league, if not the worst, and has been. It's one of the toughest stadiums to play in for a number of reasons. Wind, potentially swirling, the winter mix. Pittsburgh's famous for having all 4 seasons in one day, right? Where, I mean, it could be in the 60s and 70s, and then 2 days later drop down in snow and then freeze overnight, and pipes are busting. This place is crazy because it's the Paris of Appalachia, and you got the mountains and the river and everything, that goes with it. So the thing that is interesting about 32 is it 32, with a 20+ mile an hour wind chill and a winter mix, or is it 32 and is the sun out? Because to your point, 32 can be a nice respite in this part of the world and at this time of year. But coming up from Texas, it's not just banning cowboy hats at Permane Bros. It's saying, yo, man, we want everything here to feel different.
Yeah, I think 32 with a brisk wind, not big enough to impact the passing game that much. But I mean, hell, maybe against Houston, that would be another advantage that you could harvest. But, that wind just starts cutting through you. And I think for people that are used to that temperature of air, it's not a big deal. But again, for folks from the Houston area, especially, that's pretty dang close to the Gulf. That's a similar climate to Florida, much closer to Florida than the Dallas weather is. Okay, first opportunity here for the Steelers. So much is made about the Texans pass rushers. But I think the Steelers pass rushers are being overlooked here, especially in the context of one of their tackles, the rookie. Is it Ariante Ursary? 40 pressures, 11 penalties dude gave up. I mean, he is capable of being the blinking light on an offense that you must attack, and is going to be the reason that Texans fans are complaining about another missed opportunity here with CJ Stroud. Trent Brown's their other tackle. I think he only had 5 penalties, gave up 11 pressures. He's fairly solid, but that's how they lost to the Chiefs last year, where they sacked Stroud 8 times in Kansas City last year. You're looking for a repeat of that.
Yeah, I mean, go back to the Baltimore matchup previously, where they just look overmatched, and that starts up front. And so you're talking about matchups, and you're talking about position groups now. There can't be any doubt. There can't be any question. This can't be one of those games where we're like, what do you mean TJ Watt had no counting stats against a street free agent? Like, this has to be one of those games where, Watt, Highsmith, Herbig, even Jack Sawyer, when he gets his chance, like, when you're in there, you have got to be putting pressure on these guys, and you got to be seeing, Black and Harmon and Cam and Benton, especially in the nickel packages. Like, if you can force them behind the sticks and keep them to 3.6, 3.9 on the season, I think 3.6 for the past 6 weeks, where they're not having success, even for their limited success, you can limit them even more than they have limited themselves almost, and get them into third and longs. You got to win. There can be no doubt. I feel like if the Texans offensive line is able to break even, or even, like, I'm not even talking about win it, but just be a stalemate where you're looking up at the end of the day and there's no production from those guys, particularly the 4 rotating on the edge, like, Houston wins this game walking away.
Yeah. I mean, you could see this game going a lot of different ways, but from a Steelers perspective, I'm not a defensive coordinator, but I think I'd dare them to run. Let's see if you can do it.
Sit in the shell.
Yeah. This is the thing that you risk is, could we sit back, play coverage, dare them to run, and dare them to drive the entire field instead of giving up the big plays, and see if they can execute patient offense like that, because that is not to their strength. That is not their identity. That is not what they want to do. So defensively, I think this game matches up very well for the Steelers to have a chance of keeping them under 20 points. But could you, on the other side, get to 20 points? So let's talk about Aaron Rodgers.
Let me not overstep. I'm not just talking about sacks or peanut punches and strip sacks. I'm talking about, let's not forget that Cam and TJ and this is one of the best teams. I mean, hell, Logan Lee played 1 snap last week, and what do you do? Batted a ball down. This is one of the best teams in the league of batting balls. And if you get one of those tipped up going the other way, on bookended, sandwiched in between a couple of 3 and outs, and Aaron Rodgers is able to, you go up 10-0, that's a different game entire.
So what do you expect of Aaron Rodgers in this game? Like, last week, he had incredible swagger. You can look up my career. I don't have back-to-back stinkers. Right. And then he did have a stinker for 3 quarters, and then he played like a Hall of Famer for the last 10 minutes, and he ended up winning that game in incredibly dramatic fashion thanks to a missed field goal. But I don't know what to expect. I could see the Steelers having 0 points at halftime, and I hate myself for saying that. What's that?
You know how you were talking about at the open about how, like, until they win, it's not just a narrative. It's all the data points are they give up 30 points, they lose, they're one and done, right? Like, it is what it is. And some of that's true for this team as a whole. Like, Mike Tomlin as a entity, as a coaching being, like, his bones are his bones. Like, you can redo the roof and the windows and the HVAC and everything else, but it's the bones of the house are still the bones of the house, right? I mean, you don't see them coming out and all of a sudden just throwing go balls to DK Metcalf. You might see them scheme something into empty to take a shot. You might see them have one of those insert Mount Washington, Jonnu Smith, looks like it's going to be a blocking play, and they shoot through the C gap, and now they're running a corner route, and they're wide open. Remember, we hit Washington, and he airmailed Jonnu. I think there's going to be some of that built into the design, but they're not going to come out and all of a sudden just start throwing nines and going 9-8-9 Comanche like it's the end of any given Sunday.
Right? They did that a little bit in the first game against Baltimore, kind of to prove a point, I think, but that's maybe the only time we've seen that this year where there was a
Baltimore's DB. That might be the worst defensive backfield in the league, the way it shook out. I mean, people talk about the Kyle Hamilton, becoming him and what Alohi Gilman allowed him to do, but what you look up at the end of the day, I mean, Mumphrey ended up statistically as one of the worst corners in the league, and I love the young kid Wiggins, right? But it's the same thing. Like, the data points are the data points, and when you're healthy and you have everybody up and you take those shots and they work, and then it's a momentum-based conversation. I feel like everything about this game, not even just from them as an offense, even if they were to get up 10 or 14-0, they're not all of a sudden going to go look to turn it into a 40-point bonanza. They're going to try to shrink the game. That's just the way Tomlin's wired. That's the way this business runs. And, the favorite one, there's a fine line between drinking wine and stomping grapes. I would like to see them stomp on the Texans' neck. I would like to see them put the pressure on them as opposed to doing what the Green Bay Packers did just last night and let the game come back to you where, how many times do I bitch, moan, and complain about game flow and game script? Like, you have to play your game. You have to have the hill you're going to die on. And he said things like that. And they've done some of that defensively where they said, hey, look, we're going to make Lamar beat us. And if he does, hats off. We're not going to let Derrick Henry do the damn thing. And that almost bit him. So even if you pick the hill, it could be the wrong damn hill, or you could have the wrong size swords. So, you go into this thing as Mike Tomlin, as the Pittsburgh Steelers do business. I'm just thinking about what could change. And let
me jump in there because I don't think they're going to change their stripes. I think the thing is you're hoping Aaron Rodgers will elevate himself around the team. That the idea is Aaron Rodgers has not played off script. He has not improvised nearly as well as he did early in his career. Was he saving himself? Could he be adrenalized by the playoffs? Like, is this playoff LeBron showing up at 39 years old saying, hey, guess what? I still can go do it. I'm just pacing myself for the regular season.
You're allowed to put hands on people in this league. This is a different game than the NBA. All kidding aside, though, as we come back to, putting the helmet and shoulder pads on and living in a hand-checking, bad boys, Jordan rules type of deal, I actually think that would favor them. I actually think that's the world they want to live in. They want to play in the phone booth and shrink this game to the point where you get that Jaylen Warren run out, you get that Gainwell run out, and that's how they think they can run away. What I'm actually concerned about is Aaron Rodgers trying to do too much early. I'm worried about him changing or taking every RPO and flicking that wrist.
I definitely don't want that. I definitely don't want him like audibling out of stuff. But when the play structure breaks down, what Rodgers are you getting? I think that's the opportunity. Is it scrambling Rodgers? Is it, the Rodgers that might be a little bit quicker to escape pressure because of the moment and because of the way that as an older man you can still feel younger some games. I think that's what the playoff stands to give you, is that extra adrenaline boost that maybe you don't feel after 20 years in the league on most Sundays.
Yeah, sorry, dude. I skipped right over that. So that's the difference between having the angle on Captain Jack All-Pro Campbell and not having it on a Tavius Robinson or a Travis Jones or whomever it is, because you saw him duck and get down, just like you saw him try to pick Jack Campbell up off the ground and tell him he's ageist and he's an asshole because he can't outrun a 42-year-old. I think that part of the conversation, Aaron Rodgers is a front runner. If he gets out and he has the step, he has the angle, and he also knows that he can't get hit if he gives himself up, then he's going to talk shit. He's a spry chicken. He got up on the right side of the bed. The problem with the Houston Texans is it's a collective of football sociopaths, and they like the phone booth too. They're actively trying to break your ribs and steal your soul like Tom Brady did in the 2016 AFC Championship.
Okay, up next here, next branch on this Steelers-Texans topic tree. Rodgers with the Jets last year beat the Texans in the regular season. The Jets only scored 21 points. That was a very good New York defense. Rodgers 211 with 3 touchdowns. Breece Hall had an efficient day running, but only ran it like 15 times for maybe 80 yards or so. So, you know, you keep the Texans under 20. You run the ball well. Rodgers doesn't turn it over. I think that's the path to victory for me if I'm trying to draw this up. Like, that's the kind of game that I want. What do you think that does for Rodgers, that familiarity with seeing the Houston Texans last year?
Well, this is what I was trying to think about relative to this is, you know, they had Joe Mixon that day, meaning Houston, and Joe Mixon was like 20 plus and 100 plus doing Joe Mixon stuff. They also had Tank Dell, and Tank Dell, I mean, what a talent and what an unfortunate series of injuries and off-field stuff. I mean, he was like 6 for $125. And that was a different Texans team too, because I believe Nico was out at that time. So I don't know. You know how much I love Breece Hall. I think all my favorite teams. I want one of my either my hometown teams or my podcast teams. I want someone to go save him from Gotham. The thing about that game, the thing about that day, you know, when you look at it, you know, to your point about him having the wheels still. He had 1 carry for -1 yard. He was sacked twice for 18. And he was just extremely efficient. They took advantage of opportunities. And when you think about what they're going to have to do to get past the wild card round, sometimes so much of it is about taking advantage of what they give you. You were just talking about daring Houston to run. I have a feeling like Houston's going to dare them to throw. I mean, if it's Adam Thielen in the seam, they're not scared of him. Houston expects to take that ball the other way. Houston expects to earhole Pat Freiermuth and maybe end his day altogether, right? Like that's the way they play. Like they play to the echo of the whistle. This is an old school team. If the Houston Texans were wearing black and gold, you would want them to be your Pittsburgh Steelers because they remind you of all of our great old teams. And they're not going to come into this game and just say, yeah, we're better than you. We're good enough. We're going to let Will and Danielle hunt, and we'll see how it shakes out. Like they're going to do some really fun stuff, and they're also going to punch you in the mouth and in the gut over and over and over again. So when they give you, when Jonnu does turn loose, you call a simple sail route and 2 dudes run with DK deep, and all of a sudden Jonnu is wide open. Aaron Rodgers can't be clicking his heels like he's in the Wizard of Oz trying to find the yellow brick road and go home again. He's got to put that ball on the numbers, and it's got to, like the plays that are there have to be the plays that are made.
Okay, to that, let's look next here on the Noll Road at things we feel confident the Steelers are going to be able to execute Monday night against this Houston defense and things they could struggle against considering where Houston is strong. The place that they're the most weak, you look at their edges, their linebackers, their safety, their 2 corners, they're all great. But their defensive tackles, the old man Sheldon Rankins and Tommy Togiai, you know, the young man, just hasn't been good. You can get both of these guys off the ball. So what ends up happening is Houston is weak against zone runs, primarily on the inside, but also wide and outside in the cutback lanes. If you can get your runners to cut back into those lanes in zone, and I feel pretty good about what Arthur Smith has with his zone packages, that's where you start. Then you go to their schematic weakness, which is, it actually looks like they like to play a lot of traditional Tampa 2 with their safety splitting and going and staying wide, and they trust Shire in the middle, but that's where the analytics say you can get them on the seam with your tight end, on slants, on some dig routes. So, you know, I think that's Thielen. I think that's Freiermuth. The unfortunate thing is they're demons against toss sweeps. They're just too physical and fast and good at tackling. They're the most efficient tackling team in the game. They're amazing at shutting down wide receiver screens, so you can't get in stacks and bunches and throw it out there and expect to generate anything. So, those are a couple of the things that the Steelers have been good at that you would expect them to try to build a game plan around. But I think if you think you're throwing it out to the flats and you're going to screen and yak on these guys like Gainwell and Warren, I don't think you can expect those screens and those swing passes or even those check downs to have any positive return on investment at any point in the game.
So the one thing I've been thinking a lot about is like, where's the height, weight, speed advantage? Because they don't really have one. Stingley's every bit of 6'1", $190. Lassiter's like 6'2", 185. They're sticky, they're long, they're fast. Lassiter plays way faster than he runs with a laser or a stopwatch. Like, the football speed stuff and just the competitive nature of it is just ridiculous. The Underwear Olympics like failed that young man, but blessings on the Texans for going and getting him and looking past all that. And so why am I talking about that? Why does that matter? I'm thinking about DK in London. I'm thinking about DK Metcalf in the slot. I'm thinking about MVS in the slot. I'm thinking about what have they been practicing? We heard about how Freiermuth and him were practicing the stick nod for months. What have Aaron Rodgers, MVS, even behind the scenes, like what have they been talking about implementing when they get here? Because the expectation was that they were going to be here, and the expectation is they were going to have to figure out how to make plays. And you're not having movie nights where TJ's coming, 5 minutes after his collapsed lung with no shoes on, sitting on your couch throwing popcorn at each other and not drawing stuff up. You're not just hanging out watching Ratatouille, right? Like these guys are doing football stuff for the past few months for this moment, for Monday night. And I think that's part of the problem that I had with the regular season and talking about treating it like 18 individual scrimmages because it really wasn't that important, is they never really developed that thing. Like they had flashes of it. They had really interesting schemed elements, but there's no expectation for them to come into this game and do anything other than the stuff you just mentioned doesn't work against the Houston Texans, because that's where they default to, right? Like when Peyton Manning when Tom Brady, how many times have you heard him talk about, I got 80,000 yards on this one play or out of this one formation? Because they know that like when it's that time and you got that hill that you're deciding you're going to go die on, it's these players, it's these plays. This is what we do. Stop us, right? And I don't know that the Steelers have that or will. So from week to week, you have to look back and you have to say, when we got those things that we liked, where did they come from? They came from months and months of practice, and then they unveiled them. And that's why I had the Wizard of Oz on my mind, because we're talking about pulling back the curtain, saying what's really going on back there. And this might finally be the week we find out.
And God, I hope it's in play action. I think that's the way that you get it. Like, I think you need to protect Rodgers by running it a lot when you do pass a lot of play action. And I think you need extra guys. Like, I want to see a lot of jumbo formation. It sucks to not have Darnell Washington in this game, but I need to go with the conservative game plan, taking shots. Like, I don't want these plays to be drawn up with the idea that we're coming out aggressive and we're going to leave our tackles on islands. And I think that is a recipe for being down multiple scores by the time you get to the second quarter.
Well, and this is what's tough, dude. DK Metcalf has been a very, very good playoff player. I mean, he's like, 113 and over a touchdown a game. I mean, he's never not produced. Like, I mean, he's a gamer and he's really, really good. And then you go, okay, well, what happens if we get him after a couple of weeks of not playing at all with a history of playoff success and Stingley's just bodying him up? Or they're not looking his way and he doesn't have a catch or only has one target at halftime. Are we in that crash out scenario, or is he able to be composed and go, get a book like AJ Brown or otherwise impact this game by saying, hey, let me go play gunner on special teams so I can just fucking hit somebody, because we've seen him do so many special things for this team and they're big impactful ones like we talked about in Ireland. And then there's little stuff like showing, hey, I'm the fourth highest paid receiver in the whole damn league, but I'm going to go play gunner on special teams if that's what it takes to get this victory. And that mentality turns into thinking about a guy like Skowronek and the highlight reel running over loop last week, earning Pro Bowl nods, selling his hoodies for, the family landscaping company and all that stuff. But like, Remember early in the season, he was the one running the shallow route, catching this surprise touchdown. Last week, it was Thielen with the ear hole in the seam. So, like, who's the surprise guy that they've got something drawn up for this week? That's something else that's interesting to me.
I'm going to go Skoranek. First time since week 1. He's getting in there. Okay, the plan is to go live Monday night at halftime. We think we should be able to get our families in bed and quieted, so we'll be free without interruption.
I'm going to have a naked baby, I'm going to have a diapered baby in my lap.
If you like watch-alongs, or if you want our thoughts on the game instead of listening to the network play-by-play team, maybe if you can't get the TV feed while you're out and about or at work or something, and you just want to stay updated, we'll do the play-by-play for you. We'll give you our thoughts, and we're very much looking forward to an exciting conclusion with a Steelers victory. Like the video if you're with us on that, and until Monday night, we'll see you here on the Noll Road.